Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This time we are listening to one story. It's a part 1 and part 2, which is a very recent one. Part 1 was posted 3 days ago and part 2 was posted 2 days ago, and it's from Responsible One 7014. And let's just get right into the story. The first time I saw her on the baby monitor, it was 2:07 a.m. I know that because I looked straight at the time before I even understood what I was seeing. My son Owen was asleep on his back in the crib. He was 3 months old then. His hands were up by his head, his mouth was open a little, and he was making those tiny wet baby breath sounds that are somehow gross and comforting at the same time. The nursery was dark except for the humidifier lights and the greenish glow from the monitor. There was a woman sitting in a rocking chair beside his crib, hands folded in her lap, head bowed, not moving. For 1 second, I honestly thought I was still half asleep. Then I was out of bed so fast I slammed my chin into the frame. Rachel woke up when I hit the nursery door hard enough to bounce it off the wall. The room was empty. No woman, no rocking chair either. We had moved that out 2 weeks before because it took up too much space and one of us was always clipping it in the dark. The nursery smelled like baby powder, warm plastic, and a little bit of eucalyptus from the humidifier. Owen stirred once, made a face, then settled right back down. I checked behind the door, I checked the closet, I looked under the crib, even though some part of me already knew how stupid that was. Nothing. Rachel came into the doorway, rubbing one eye. "What happened?" she whispered. I was still breathing hard. I thought I saw someone in here. Someone? On the monitor. She looked at the crib, then at me. "You need sleep," she whispered. That should have been the end of it. If it had happened once and never again, I probably would have let it go. New parents see weird shit. Or think they do. You stop sleeping, right, and your brain starts acting like every shadow in the house has bad intentions. That's what I told myself. Then it happened again the next night. This time it was 2:14 a.m. The monitor made that little static click it does when the feed refreshes. I opened my eyes and looked at it without even moving first. She was standing beside the crib. Not sitting this time, standing. One hand was resting on the rail, her head was bent toward him. I remember staring for maybe 2 seconds too long, because some part of my brain was still trying to force her into a normal shape. Intruder, neighbor, reflection, a person. Then I noticed the arm. Her hand was on the crib rail, but the forearm looked too long for where the shoulder was. Not stretchy, not cartoonish, not movie weird, just wrong enough that my body knew before my brain did. I ran in there again. Empty. The room was exactly how I left it, except the blanket had shifted. That was what got me. I know that sounds small, but if you ever put a baby down asleep, you know every little thing after that. The blanket had been tucked under his arms. Now it sat lower, folded down more cleanly, like somebody had gently moved it so they could see him better. Rachel was behind me again. "What?" she whispered. "She was back," I whispered, "right by the crib." Rachel just stared at me. She? The woman. What woman? The one from last night. You said you thought you saw someone. That's what I'm saying. She looked at Owen, then at me, and said, "Mark, you need to stop saying that like she's a real person." That was the first time I noticed how fast whispering can make a room feel smaller. We were both keeping our voices down because of the baby, obviously, but there was something else in it too. Neither of us wanted to speak too loud in that room. Not really. The next day, I bought a second monitor. I didn't tell Rachel first because I already knew what she was going to say. That I was spiraling. That I needed one full night of sleep and maybe a doctor, which, fair enough. But if she was right, I wanted to prove it. And if she was wrong, I really wanted to prove it. So I set the old monitor back up in the nursery and paired a new one to my phone. At 2:31 a.m. the next night, she appeared on both. This time, she was closer to the crib than before. And this time, I got a better look at her hand. The fingers were too long. Not claws. Not some cheap, demonic thing with black nails and impossible joints. They were worse because they were almost human. Thin, pale, too many bends in them. The kind of fingers that made your own hand ache just looking at them. She had one hand on the rail and the other hanging at her side. Her head was turned down toward my son in a way that didn't look curious. It looked attentive. The room was empty again when I checked. But now I had screenshots. I still have them on an old phone I won't turn on anymore. The dreams started 2 nights after that. I need to say this because otherwise people turn it into something too simple. I know new parents get bad thoughts sometimes. I know about intrusive thoughts. I know stress and lack of sleep can make your brain throw horrible images at you just because it knows what you love most and what would destroy you most. I knew that even then. But these dreams didn't feel like that. At 3:08 a.m., I dreamed I was standing over Owen's crib with one hand under the back of his head and the other over his mouth. Not reaching. Already there. That was the worst part. There was no build-up in the dream, no reason, no running toward the room. I was just already in that moment. And in the dream, I knew exactly what I was about to do. I woke up choking on my own breath and half tangled in the sheets. The monitor was on. She was bent over the crib. That was the first time she looked less like a woman and more like something borrowing the shape of one badly. Her neck was too long. It looked soft, like there was too much throat and not enough structure underneath it. As she bent toward the crib, the skin of her neck folded down in loose ridges that moved too slowly and too smoothly. Her hair hung forward over the mattress, almost touching Owen's face. I ran. Again, the room was empty. Owen was fine, dead asleep, warm, breathing through his nose, little fists curled by his cheeks. I checked him so hard I woke him up. Rachel came running in and found me practically ripping the blanket off him while he screamed. "Mark," she whispered first. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I was checking him. Blanket, hands, face, chest, all of it. Like if I looked hard enough, I could prove my own hands had never touched him in the dream. "Mark," she whispered again, sharper this time. Then Owen started really crying and all the quiet we'd been trying to keep fell apart. That was our first real fight. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed at me once we got him settled again. "I told you." "No, you told me you thought you saw a woman on the monitor. This is different." "It's not different. It is when you start waking him up because you dreamed you heard him." I didn't say anything. Rachel's face changed when I stayed quiet. "Are you scared of something in that room?" she asked. "Or are you scared of yourself in that room?" That one stayed with me. Because by then I wasn't completely sure. After that, I stopped being alone with Owen if I could avoid it. I still held him, still changed him, still sat with him when Rachel showered or slept, but everything in me was wrong by then. I watched my own hands too much. I kept checking my thoughts when I picked him up, which is not something a person should have to do with their own child. He would cry, and instead of just going to him, I'd get this split second of cold panic first, like some part of me was checking whether I was safe to walk into the room. That's how it started to infect everything. I didn't just get afraid of her. I got afraid of being the thing she used. Rachel saw her for the first time at 1:56 a.m. 8 days later. We had argued that night, quietly, because everything in our apartment had become quiet by then. We whispered in the kitchen. We whispered in the hallway. We even whispered in the rooms the baby wasn't in. At some point, both of us had started acting like if we kept our voices down, whatever was happening might stay contained. Rachel said I needed help. I said she needed to stop talking to me like I was dangerous. She said, then stop acting like you might be. I slept on the couch. At 1:56 a.m., the monitor crackled and woke both of us. Rachel sat up first because it was on the coffee table in front of her. I heard her inhale before I even opened my eyes. "Mark," she whispered. I looked at the screen. The woman was no longer in the chair or standing beside the crib. She was around it. At first glance, it looked almost protective, like a mother leaning over her sleeping child. That lasted maybe half a second. Then the shape of her body actually registered and I felt this cold wave go through me from head to stomach. Her spine was arched too high. Both arms were threaded through the crib slats from opposite sides in a way that no human body could manage. Her shoulders had drawn inward and down like they were hinged wrong. Her head was lowered so close to Owen's chest, it looked like she was listening to him from inside the crib. Rachel made this tiny broken sound beside me. Then she said, very softly, "Do not tell me that's nothing." We ran into the nursery together, empty. But the mobile was moving, not spinning, just rocking a little, one plush moon knocking lightly into the other. Rachel stared at it, then at the crib, then back at the monitor in her hand. Owen was smiling in his sleep. That was the first time I saw him do that while she was there. Not some random sleep smile either. It looked familiar, comfortable. The kind of smile baby do when they hear a voice they know. Rachel shut the monitor off so hard I thought she'd break it. We didn't sleep at all after that. Morning made everything uglier instead of better. That was when Rachel finally asked me if there was anything I had never told her. Not, "Do you think this is supernatural?" Not, "Do your family ever talk about ghosts?" She skipped all the usual stuff and went right to the part that hurt. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Mark." She waited. And eventually I told her about Grotto. We'd had 3 miscarriages before Owen. I don't usually tell people that because people either get too careful around you after that or they avoid it so hard it feels worse. Rachel took it harder on the surface. I took it harder when I was alone. After the 3rd one, I drove drunk to this old roadside prayer grotto my grandmother used to take me to when I was a kid. The church itself had burned down before I was born, but the little stone alcove out back was still there in the trees. Saint statues, burnt out candles, coins, notes jammed into cracks. I went there in the middle of the night and knelt in the dirt and said, "Take whatever you want, just let us keep the next one." I barely remembered saying it until the monitor stuff started. When I told Rachel, she just stared at me. "You said what?" I said it again. She looked toward the nursery. "You don't get to leave that out." I didn't think it mattered. What the duck else do you think matters right now? That day, we took Owen to a hotel. It didn't help. At 2:22 a.m., the monitor in the hotel room showed her standing in the corner of the nursery. That was the moment things got worse in a new way. Because until then, some part of me had still hoped maybe she belonged to the apartment somehow. The room, the building, the old monitor. Something local and fixable. But no, it was him, or me, or both. The 4th time she appeared, she was touching him. just his blanket at first. One hand folded over the edge, fingers bent too far at the joints, almost delicate. Her sleeve had fallen back enough that I could see her wrists and part of the forearm, and it looked wrong in the same way her neck had looked wrong. Too thin, too long. Like if you stripped the flesh off it, you'd find the wrong number of bones. The room was empty when I ran in there, but the blanket had been pulled down again. And Owen was reaching upward in his sleep. Not flailing, not dreaming, reaching. That did more damage than the visual stuff. You can survive a lot of fear if the child is afraid too. Then at least your fear points in a useful direction. But he wasn't afraid of her. He was beginning to know her. That's the thing I don't think I'll ever get over. Not the monitor, not the dreams, not her face, once I finally saw all of it. That my son seemed to recognize her before I fully understood what she was. That was part 1. Let's move on to part 2. After the hotel, I think something in me gave up on the idea that this could still be explained. Not in some dramatic way. I didn't suddenly become a true believer. I did not start drawing symbols on the floor or calling ghost hunters or any of that stupid shit people think they would never do until they are exhausted and terrified and their baby is smiling at something that is not there. I just stopped expecting the next morning to fix it. That was the shift. Before that, every bad night still came with this little thought in the back of my head that daylight would make it normal again. That if I got enough coffee in me, enough air, enough distance from 2 a.m., the whole thing would shrink back down into stress and bad sleep and one ugly stretch of my life. After the hotel, I stopped waiting for that. Because once Rachel saw her too, there was nowhere left for me to put it. That should have helped. It didn't. If anything, it made things worse between us. You would think seeing the same thing would pull people together. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just confirms that what is happening is real and gives the fear a second body to live in. Rachel stopped arguing with me about whether the woman existed. Instead, she started watching me. Not obviously, not cruelly, but enough. If I took too long warming a bottle, she would come into the kitchen and stand there. If I got up in the middle of the night after a nightmare, she woke all the way up, not just enough to ask what happened. If Owen cried and I reached for him, there was always that half second where she looked at my hands before she looked at his face. That was the demon's best trick. Not showing itself, making us dangerous to each other. I told myself I understood why she was scared. I did understand. I still do. But understanding something does not make it hurt less when you see it happening in your own house. The dreams got worse. The next one came at 3:26 a.m. In it, I was in the bathroom with Owen in my arms. The tub was full, not deep, just enough. I remember kneeling beside it with one hand under him, feeling how warm he was, how trusting his body felt when it relaxed against mine. And I remember thinking very clearly in the dream that if I held him under long enough, it would finally be quiet. That was the thoughts. Not anger, not panic. Quiet. That was what made me wake up shaking so hard my teeth hurt. I was back in bed. Rachel was beside me. The room was dark. And the monitor was hissing. I looked down at the screen, and she was standing so close to the crib that only part of her fit in the frame. One side of her face. One shoulder. One hand on the rail. But that was enough. The skin around her mouth looked wrong in a new way now. Like it had begun to split at the corners from opening too far too often. Her lips were not stretched into a smile. That would have been easier. They were just parted slightly, and the opening was wider than the mouth should be when it is at rest. Her teeth showed because they could not be covered anymore. The hand on the crib rail had changed too. The fingers still looked too long, but now the joints seemed more obvious, more deliberate. One extra bend in each one. Or something close enough to that my brain kept trying and failing to map a normal skeleton under the skin. I ran to the nursery. Empty. Owen was fine. Still sleeping. Still breathing. I stood there in the dark with one hand on the crib mattress and the other over my mouth because I was suddenly very close to crying. And what scared me most in that moment was not even her. It was the thoughts I had in the dream. The stillness of it. The way it had felt like violence. It had felt like permission. Rachel was in the doorway when I turned around. She did not ask this time. She looked at the monitor still clutched in my hand and then looked down at Owen. Then she whispered, "What did you dream now?" That single word, now, almost broke me. I told her every ugly detail. The tub, the water, the thought. She listened without interrupting me. Then when I was done, she said very quietly, "I can't keep hearing you say this." I said, "You think I want to?" "That's not what I mean. I know what you mean." "Oh, you don't? Then say it." She looked at Owen for a long time before answering. "I mean, I don't know how to keep you and him in the same room when you wake up like this." That was the ugliest fight we had. Not loud. Somehow that made it worse. People think real bad fights involve screaming. The worst ones do not. The worst ones happen in low voices while a baby sleeps 10 feet away and both of you know that raising your voice would somehow make the whole thing more real. I accused her of treating me like I was already guilty. She accused me of acting like fear itself should excuse anything. I asked her if she wanted me to leave. She said, "I want this out of our life," which was not the same answer. By morning we were wrecked enough that Rachel called her sister. This is how we ended up at Dana's place. Dana lived 40 minutes away in a condo with beige walls and cheap grey furniture, and the kind of aggressively normal energy that I thought, stupidly, might help. She did not ask too many questions at first. She knew enough about the miscarriages to hear strain in Rachel's voice and understand that something serious was going on without us explaining much. We told her we needed a few nights and that we were both sleep-deprived and not doing well. All of that was true. We did not bring the nursery monitor with us. That was Rachel's call. She unplugged it herself and said, "I don't want that thing in this house." I did not argue. For the first time in weeks, I thought maybe we were about to get one clean night. No screen, no nursery, no old apartment. Dana's guest room was small, warm, dry, and completely ordinary. Owen's portable crib fit at the foot of the bed. There was a bathroom across the hall, no dark corners, no history. I fell asleep out of pure exhaustion around 11:40 p.m. At 2:11 a.m., I woke up because Owen laughed. Not cried, laughed. A short, breathy little baby laugh from the foot of the bed. I sat up so fast I pulled something in my neck. The room was dark except for the streetlight glow coming through the blinds. Owen was lying on his back in the portable crib, eyes closed, smiling toward the corner of the room. Not toward me, not toward Rachel. Toward the corner near the closet. I stared at that corner until my eyes watered. Nothing. I told myself there was nothing. Then Owen lifted one hand and made that little reaching motion again. Small fingers opening and closing in the air like someone had just lowered a face toward his. Rachel woke up when I got out of bed. "What is it?" I whispered. "He's doing it again." Rachel pushed herself up and saw him smiling. That put the same look on her face that I had already started to dread. Not just fear, recognition. like something we had hoped was linked to the monitor or the apartment had just walked into a room without needing either. Dana knocked on the door 20 minutes later because she heard us moving around and thought Owen was sick. Rachel lied, said he was fussy. Dana offered gripe, water, and went back to bed. Neither of us told her our son had just laughed at an empty corner for 15 straight seconds. The next morning, I found a wet mark on the inside wall of the portable crib. Not a stain exactly. More like a handprint had been pressed there and then dried. Too long to be Owen's hand, too narrow to be mine or Rachel's. I wiped it off before Rachel saw it. I didn't know why I did that. Maybe because by then every piece of evidence felt like another vote against me somehow. Another thing that would make Rachel look at me first before she looked at the room. That afternoon, I finally called someone. Not a paranormal person. Not yet. A priest. The same parish my grandmother used to go to before she died still had an older priest there named Father Marino who remembered me well enough to sound cautious instead of confused when I called him and asked if he had time to talk. I did not tell him everything on the phone, just enough. I said there had been losses. I said I had made a promise somewhere I should not have. I said something was in my son's room at night. I said I was not sure if the danger was in the room or in me. There was a pause. Then he said, "Bring the child." That same evening, Rachel and I took Owen to the church. Not the old burned one, a newer one. Fluorescent hallways, cheap office carpet, parish bulletin boards full of bake sale flyers and baptism photos. It should have felt ridiculous. It would have, if I had not already been so far past normal shame. Father Marino was older than I remembered, smaller too, white hair, glasses, nicotine fingers. He did not look like someone who fought demons. He looked like someone who spent too much time around grief and knew not to flinch when it changed shape. He blessed Owen first. Then he asked Rachel to wait outside with the baby so he could speak to me alone. That should have scared me more than it did. By then, I think I was willing to say almost anything if somebody else could hold the fear for 5 minutes. I told him about the grotto, the exact words, the dreams, the woman on the monitor, Rachel seeing her, the voice from the cracked screen, everything. When I was done, he sat very still for a while. Then he asked, "Has the child started preferring her?" That hit me so hard I almost got angry. I said, "What does that even mean?" He said, "Does he calm when she is present, reach toward her, smile before she appears, cry when she does not?" I did not answer right away because I hated how cleanly he had named it. He must have seen the answer on my face. He leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes for a second. Then this did not begin when you first saw her. It began when she was first allowed to wait. That sentence still bothers me. Not because I do not understand it, because I do. I had made a promise. Maybe not to her exactly, maybe not using any name I knew, but something had heard grief and permission in the same breath and taken me seriously. Father Marino said some other things too. Most of them I only half remember because by then I was running on no sleep and dread and self-disgust. I remember, never bargain in desperation, do not repeat the words, do not let fear make the choice sound merciful, do not leave the child alone at night. And worst of all, she will try to move through your love for him, not around it. That one stuck. Because that was exactly what it felt like. Not an attack from outside. A thing moving through the softest parts of us, until we did not know which thoughts were ours anymore. Father Marino came back to Dana's place that night. Dana was not thrilled about this, to put it mildly. She had gone from concerned sister to actively pissed off by then. The story we'd given her had too many holes. She kept catching Rachel crying in the bathroom. She kept hearing me pacing at 3 in the morning. And now I'm bringing a priest to her condo after dark, with no explanation beyond, we need him to bless the room. She asked Rachel if I was having some kind of breakdown. Rachel did not answer fast enough. That was another bad sign. Father Marino did not do anything dramatic. No screaming, no holy water theatrics. He blessed the guest room, the crib, the corners, the window, the closet. He blessed Owen while he slept. He blessed me too, at my request, and when his thumb touched my forehead, I realized I was shaking again. At one point he asked, "Where's the monitor?" Rachel said, "We left it unplugged." He looked at me. "Where?" I told him, "At the apartment, in the nursery dresser." He said, "That was a mistake." I asked why. He said, "Because if she showed herself there, she's been using it as a place to be seen. You should never leave a door open once something learns the shape of it." That did not help. Not even a little. We slept with the lamp on that night. Or tried to. At 3:17 a.m., Owen started crying. Not the normal half-sleep fussing, real crying. Panicked, gulping, chest-tight crying. Rachel got to him first. She lifted him up. She lifted him out of the crib, and he arched so hard in her arms, I thought for a second he might choke. Father Marino came into the room in his socks, hair crushed on one side from sleep, and the three of us stood there while my son screamed at a spot halfway between the closet and the ceiling. Then, all at once, he stopped. Not settled, stopped. His whole body went loose in Rachel's arms. His eyes went wide and fixed on the same corner. Then he smiled. I think that was the first moment I saw real fear in Father Marino's face. Not concern. Not old man worry. Fear. He told Rachel to take the baby downstairs. Then he shut the bedroom door and turned to me and said, "Do not look at the corner if she speaks." I wish I could tell you I followed that instruction. I didn't. The room had gone cold. Not freezer cold, damp cold. The kind that makes fabric smell wrong and raises the hair on your arms before it touches the skin. I could hear Rachel downstairs trying to soothe Owen, her voice shaking. Dana was asking what was going on. Father Marino was praying under his breath, not loudly, not for effect. The way people mutter when they are trying to keep their own breathing steady. Then the closet door moved. Not opening, just a small shift, like someone behind it had leaned against it lightly. I looked. I know he told me not to. I know. At first I saw nothing but the seam of the door and a dark line where it met the frame. Then I saw fingers appear around the edge. Long, pale. Too many soft bends in them. They curled around the wood slowly, almost lazily, like whatever they belonged to knew we were already past pretending. Father Marino said my name sharply, but it was too late. The door opened another inch, and she looked in. No monitor now, no grainy screen, no green night vision, no static to make her easier to deny. Just the thing itself, in the doorway of my wife's sister's guest room, looking at me like it already knew we'd run there. She was less human than the monitor ever showed. That is the simplest, honest thing I can say. The proportions of her had gone wrong in the room itself. Her shoulders were too narrow and too high. Her arms were too long. Yes, but not in a stretched way. In a made-that-way. Her mouth was split wider at the corners than I had understood from the screen. The skin around it looked thin and glossy, like it had been opened too many times. in devotion instead of violence. Her eyes were bright and wet and calm, and her lower body was not a body I can explain cleanly. The best I can do is this. She did not seem built for walking anymore. There were joints in places I did not want to track. Angles hidden by her dress or skin or shadow. I honestly do not know which. She was folded inward on herself in ways that made the narrow closet's doorway look less like a boundary and more like a shape she had been waiting to unfold through. The smell hit next. Old milk, damp cloth, candle wax, something sweet gone rotten. Father Marino stepped between me and the closet and raised his hand. She did not react to him at all. She kept looking at me. And that was the worst part. Not hostility, not rage, expectation. Like she knew this still came down to me. Then she opened her mouth. I never heard words from her directly, not once. But the room changed when she did. The lamp flickered. My ears filled with pressure. And from downstairs, in my own voice, clear as if I had spoken beside Rachel's ear, I heard, "You can have him, just stop," Rachel screamed. I ran. By the time I got downstairs, she was backed into the kitchen with Owen, crushed against her chest so tightly he was wailing again. Dana was standing in front of them with a carving knife from the drying rack in one hand, and absolutely no idea what she meant to do with it. Father Marina was behind me, breathing hard now, praying in a voice that had finally lost its calm. Rachel looked at me, and for 1 second I saw something on her face that still wakes me up. Not belief, not accusation, the possibility that she was not sure whether the voice she heard had really come from upstairs or from something already wearing enough of me to make the difference meaningless. That was the line the demon had been working toward all along. Not stealing the baby out of a crib, not appearing on monitors forever, getting us to the point where handing him over would sound like protection. We did not stay the night there. Dana practically threw us out, and I do not blame her. She told Rachel to take the baby and call when she was ready to tell the truth about whatever the hell was happening. She did not say it cruelly. She said it like somebody who had just watched a room turn inside out around the family and needed distance from it immediately. We drove until sunrise. No plan, no destination, just movement. Rachel sat in the back seat with Owen while I drove because she would not leave him alone with me, even in a moving car. And by then I could not even tell her she was wrong. We ended up at a 24-hour diner off the highway where nobody looked twice at exhausted people with a baby. Rachel fed Owen in the booth while I sat across from her staring at coffee I could not drink. Neither of us said much. Then Owen looked up from Rachel's arms and smiled at the dark window behind me. I did not turn around. I couldn't. Rachel saw my face and knew why. That was maybe the moment everything truly broke between us. Not because she stopped loving me, because she stopped being able to put me on the safe side of what was happening. A week later she took Owen to stay with her mother. I do not blame her for that either. She did not leave me in some dramatic way. There was no scene. She just said she needed him somewhere that was not orbiting me and whatever had attached itself to this family through me. That hurt because it was true. I stayed in the apartment alone for 4 nights after that. I don't know why. Pride maybe? Denial? A stupid need to prove that if I was the one this thing had opened itself toward, then maybe I could keep it away from them by keeping still long enough for it to settle on me instead. It did not work like that. On the second night, I woke up at 2:40 a.m. because the unplugged monitor on the dresser was hissing. Not on, not connected, just hissing. Then the screen lit on its own. The nursery came into view. The crib was empty, because Owen was not there anymore. And she was standing in the room, looking directly into the camera. That was the first time I got the sense that she was angry. Not furious in a human way, not thrashing, not shrieking, just a colder stillness than before. The kind you feel from a thing that has been patient a long time and has just had its hand slapped away from something it already considered partly its own. Her face was worse too, more open, more split. The mouth no longer trying to hold its own shape properly. The eyes wider, brighter, focused with a devotion that had started to turn possessive. Then she moved, not across the nursery, toward the screen. She came closer without crossing space right. 1 second by the crib, the next too near the lens, her face swelling into the grain and static until the whole monitor image became skin, eye, mouth. And then, perfectly clear, my own voice came out of the speaker and said, "He knows me now." I threw the monitor against the wall hard enough to break it open. There was wiring inside, dust, cracked plastic, nothing else. No hidden speaker, no transmitter, no trick I could point at and say, "There, that is what I'm actually fighting." I left the apartment the next morning and have not slept there since. Rachel still will not let me be alone with Owen. I don't blame her. I see him during the day now, at her mother's house, with doors open and lights on and another adult always somewhere in earshot. He still smiles at me, he still reaches for me. He is still, as far as I can tell, just a baby. That should comfort me more than it does. Because twice now, while I have been holding him, he has turned his head toward an empty corner and smiled like someone else had just walked in. And last Sunday, while Rachel's mother was in the kitchen and Rachel was upstairs changing, he looked past my shoulder, laughed softly, and said, "Mama." Then he looked back at me and started crying. I do not know what comes next. I wish I did. Father Marino still calls. Rachel still answers him. I know there are prayers being said over my son in rooms I'm not in. I know Rachel has started sleeping with a lamp on in her mother's guest room. I know she checks corners now before she lays him down. And I know that because she caught me doing the same thing in daylight last week and neither of us said anything. So if you read part 1 and were waiting for the part where we got rid of her, I'm sorry. That is not this story. This is just the part where I understand something I wish I didn't. Whatever hurt me that night at the grotto did not give us Owen out of kindness. It gave us a child with the expectation that one day I would stop resisting the shape of the deal. And now that it knows Rachel has taken him away from the room where it first started watching him, I think it has stopped waiting for the nursery to matter. I think it's learning other ways to be let in. If anything changes, I will update. If I stop updating, I don't know what that means yet. I'm trying not to know. Okay, I just want to know what this thing is. I did see a comment saying that maybe it was his grandmother, but I don't know. It's really fucking interesting. And I really hope that more updates comes, and if there are any more updates, any parts they will post, I am going to read those as well, because I'm invested in this now. Holy shit. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!